They're playing political games with a man's life. But all eyes are on them. We are watching and we are reporting.
Breaking right now, the deep state torture of Tommy Robinson gets more sadistic and twisted by the day. So let's just remember for a moment that Tommy Robinson, a civil prisoner, is currently unable to eat behind bars at HMP Woodhill. He has also had all visitors banned, effectively, can't even speak to his family. This is absolutely cruel and unusual punishment for someone who is in solitary confinement in a wing previously reserved for 16 terrorists. He doesn't see other human souls over the course of the day. The one thing getting him through, somewhat ironically, given the channel's position on Tommy Robinson, was the fact that he could watch a feed of GB News. But this has just broken from Tommy's official team. Tommy has been unable to watch GB News in his cell at HMP Woodhill. For reasons unknown, he is unable to watch GB News at all. It was on his Freeview, and now it's vanished for some reason. Given the petty and spiteful actions of the prison governorship, have they somehow removed the only channel Tommy watches in prison? Why? On its face, it appears there is an agenda to try and break Tommy mentally no matter what, and there seems to be no bounds of pettiness or spitefulness they will not lower themselves to make that happen. Father Calvin Robinson, I know a lot of people will say, oh, Diddums, he can't watch GB News, but the problem is this is now becoming a relentless attack on the man who they want to destroy physically, who they want to destroy psychologically. And where are the human rights lawyers? Nowhere.
Again, the left do not care about what's fair, what's right, what's just, or what's proper, as long as they are winning. That's all they care about. And so to ask them the question, what if this was one of you? Won't even make sense to them. It will go over their heads. They hate Tommy Robinson because of who he is and his message. He is, to them, a far-right, racist bigot, and therefore deserves everything he's getting. The truth of the matter is that Tommy Robinson is an independent journalist who released a documentary that the system didn't want, the establishment didn't want releasing, and so they whipped up a contempt of court charge. He's in prison for contempt of court, for goodness sake, which is usually a very, very short sentence. They've given him, first and foremost, 18 months. On top of that, they originally put him in a maximum security prison for contempt of court. What? Then they put him in solitary confinement. Why is he in solitary confinement? Again, for contempt of court, for releasing a documentary. And then they've not given him access to his food. And now they're saying he can't even watch half-decent television. It's inhumane. He is clearly a political prisoner. And those who are on the left who think they are human rights activists should take a look at this. They should look at the other side of the board and say, well, what about democracy? What about justice and fairness and equity, if that's what they stand for? But they won't. So it's up to us on the right. And the problem that I have is that even people on the right are not supporting him. You don't have to like Tommy. You don't have to like the way he speaks. You don't have to like the things he speaks about. But you do have to look at the fact that this is an independent journalist who has been arrested on a trumped-up charge, given a longer sentence than he deserves, being locked up, firstly in a maximum security prison and then later put in solitary confinement, has had his food options taken away from him, had his TV taken away from him. He is not being treated like a human being. He's been treated like a political prisoner, and everyone should be asking the question, why? What does the state want here? It seems they want to destroy him. They want to physically, emotionally, spiritually break him down. He is an enemy of the state right now. In times gone by, we would have broken him out, but the very least we can do is show public support for him.
Yeah, David Atherton has just had an update on this afternoon, Calvin, posting, just spoken to someone who phoned up HMP Woodhill, where Tommy Robinson's been held. He mentioned his name and prison number, no further words. She interrupted him and said he was being abusive and put the phone down. They are trying to destroy or kill him.
That's very fascinating, isn't it? That she's clearly saying this so that anyone who hears around will know she's hanging up, because the person on the phone is being abusive. We know David Atherton is not abusive and wouldn't be an abusive person to someone in an official capacity like that. But they're playing political games with a man's life. But all eyes are on them. We are watching and we are reporting. Thank God for covering this event on Outspoken, Dan. And I'll be doing the same on my show. But we, as independent journalists, have to cover what's going on because the so-called mainstream media or the legacy media do not want, in fact, they are part of this. They want to see him destroyed. And actually, I think he's going to come out even stronger. Yeah, he may be a lot thinner and a lot less healthier after all of this malnourishment and neglect, but spiritually, he's going to be stronger because he's being martyred by the state. So they're proving him right. He's being vindicated every day that he's locked up in there. And so when he comes out and the next rally happens, there's going to be a lot of people out there showing their love and support for him.
Yes, he has big plans for that first rally, hoping to get the likes of Jordan Peterson there, and then also big plans for his new investigative journalism, which is going to completely expose Labour. So big plans. But first, don't eat breakfast until you learn about caloric bypass, because your breakfast is setting you up for the entire day to either gain weight or lose it. The term breakfast, think about this, literally means to break your fast that you started the night before. About 4 hours after you eat dinner, your body switches from the nutrients we get from food to the stored glycogen we have in our bodies. Once glycogen stores are depleted, typically after about 8 to 12 hours of fasting, the body shifts to burning fat for energy. Fatty acids are released from fat stores where they are converted into ketone bodies through a process called ketogenesis. Then, when you eat your breakfast in the morning, the body starts that whole cycle again. So this is where the caloric bypass comes into play. Dr. Gundry, a heart surgeon in California, learned that if you break your nightly fast with something called MCTs, or medium chain triglycerides, you can actually keep burning fat throughout the day and use it for energy. But there are specific types of food that contain these MCTs. Using this breakfast breakthrough, he was able to lose 70 pounds just through diet. And check it out, he did it in his 60s. So you can find out all about it and his exact method by going to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. That's thehealthyfat.com/outspoken. Or you can just click on the link in the description box below, or by using the QR code, which is on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or Rumble. It is important to remember that everyone's body processes fat differently, and it all depends on your unique metabolic type, which is why in the video he released for my special viewers, he talks all about it. It really is quite fascinating and might change the way you think about health. Go to thehealthyfat.com/outspoken or click on the link in the description box below. But now, back to the show. But you speak about the mainstream media, Father Calvin, and what is so appalling is that the bleeding heart liberals who usually would actually care about humane treatment in British jails, when it comes to Tommy Robinson, completely the opposite. Let's have a watch of this from the fake news agents, and I'll get you to respond off the back.
Said. I think it's a lot of the same sort
of.
of.
I think and Nazi sympathisers, actually.
Yeah.
In the
I mean,
30s. It wasn't that different.
Look at the people that we are venerating now in Magaland. You know, the Tate brothers, Tommy Robinson, adored by the far right. You know, he is a former English Defence League thug who has faced criminal convictions, now languishing in prison, and he's seen as a champion of free speech, presumably the free speech champion that J.D. Vance was talking about. And there are all these people. If you are hypermasculine, we're with you. If you kind of think that men have been put down by this terrible, oppressive, woke society, I'm on your side. That seems to be the message coming out from Washington right now.
Father Calvin.
I mean, he's right, actually. I agree that masculine people are being censored, that people who support free speech are being persecuted. And I don't understand why he sees that as a negative. We should be supporting free speech. We should be supporting men being masculine again. It is the fake news agents' stance that men should be effeminate and that free speech should be censored? Is that what it seems to be that's what they're saying. I can't.
Yes. Yes. Calvin, can we also just have a word, though, of the irony that it's GB News that has been removed from Tommy's cell Because I understand, like, that's the best of a bad bunch, right? Like, of course, if you've got the choice of GB News and Sly News and the British Bastion Corporation, you're going to watch GB News. But while you were at GB News, Father Calvin, you were actually banned from interviewing Tommy Robinson on your show. And GB News has also just flat out failed to cover the mistreatment of Tommy Robinson behind bars. They have literally ignored this story.
The only times I've ever seen presenters on GB News speak about Tommy Robinson is to disparage him and call him a racist. And of course, on social media afterwards, they've been called out for that, but they would never properly address it on air. You're right in that when I had my show on GB News, I was not allowed to have Tommy Robinson on my show. I also wasn't allowed to have Katie Hopkins. I wasn't even allowed to have Cole Benjamin. So the censorship there is incredibly high. And so for people to call it a far-right station is absurd. It's barely even centre-right at this point in time. It is part of the legacy media now, unfortunately. But for the state to cancel that from him or to say that he's not allowed to watch it clearly shows the state, or the prison at least, sees GB News as a risk, which is really, really interesting. It shows where the prison is thinking in terms of political spheres, doesn't it?
It does. And it's the independent journalists in America who are looking at what's going on in our country with horror on a whole load of levels. But let me show you this from Don Keith, specifically on this new news regarding Tommy Robinson. He posts on X, the inhumane treatment of Tommy Robinson by HMP Woodhill Governor Nicola Marfleet is approaching Nuremberg-level violations, starving him to death and denying him basic human rights. The people of Great Britain must hold her responsible and act accordingly through whatever legal means necessary. So he's compared this to Nuremberg-level violations, Father Calvin. I know a lot of folk are saying, what's happening with the lawyers? To be honest, I don't know, but we do know that Elon Musk has agreed to fund the legal case. So you would hope that his lawyers were doing everything possible behind the scenes.
Yes, but it's obviously a very tricky situation, isn't it? When we heard a few days ago that the prison was preventing Tommy from seeing his family, they'll use any kind of semantics they can. And of course, it is the mother of his children is his ex-wife. So they'll probably say something along the lines of, well, it's not your wife, so you have no right to see her. They're not taking the human element into this. They're not taking the empathetic approach to this. They're just taking a legalistic approach in order to do what they can to punish him. So it would be very tricky for the lawyers to fight back against this. But it is good to see that Elon Musk is supporting him. And JD Vance has alluded to Tommy's situation publicly. I hope that JD Vance can come out and support Tommy publicly as well at some point, and perhaps even the president himself, because I think once Tommy gets out, he's going to need to become a political refugee. He's probably going to need citizenship in America, to be honest with you. He's not safe over here. If the state, the police, the judiciary and the prison system are all against him, he won't be safe in the UK. So I'm hoping that America is going to provide a home for him.
Although he doesn't want to go anywhere. He wants to stay and fight. But obviously, one of the big questions is, can he keep out of prison?
Right, exactly. You can't fight from prison. This is the problem.
Yeah, very good point. Very good point. It is going to be absolutely fascinating because one thing is certain, they want to silence him. Ironically, given the name of the movie that saw him behind bars. On a side note, GB News announced this week a new show called Silenced. And I just thought, are you seriously taking the mickey out of Tommy Robinson and his supporters? Because obviously that is a word very much associated with him. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.